And good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar, Identifying Priorities in Early Stage for Manufacturing Success, brought to you in partnership with Biocentric. For those of you who don't know me, hello, I'm Małgorzata. I'm the head of content here at Facilitate, and I will be your webinar host today. We have gathered a fantastic panel of experts today from regulatory, manufacturing, and biotech strategy backgrounds, and they're going to be talking about identifying and prioritizing decisions in early stages to ensure success in commercializing cell and gene therapy products. So just a quick reminder before we start that this is an interactive session, so all questions are very much encouraged. To submit a question, please use the question function on your control panel, and we will address these as they come in. And without further ado, I'll hand straight over to our moderator. Haro, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for investing your time and attending this panel discussion. My name is Haro Hartunian. I'm the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Biocentric, and I'm going to be the panel moderator today. As it was mentioned, we have a very amazing panel on identifying priorities in early stage biotech companies for their manufacturing success, where we will be talking about the big trends we need to keep our eyes on that could directly impact their business. Our goal today is that whatever your role is in the industry, in your company, that you will come away with something, a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy that you can apply to be more successful in your business. So here's the format that to give you an idea of what to expect. We'll take a few moments for each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and tell a little bit about their background in the industry, and especially Dr. Mark's case, FDA. And I'll kick off the conversation asking questions that draw out some of the high-level themes and trends that we should be thinking about. And then at the end, of course, we'll open up the floor to give you an opportunity to ask specific questions that you've been thinking about to help you to navigate the upcoming opportunities and challenges to be more successful in your business. So with that, let's get started with our panel introductions. Katie, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Kelleher. I'm an associate partner at McKinsey. I am a leader of our biopharma operations practice, specializing in manufacturing and supply chain. I serve clients, all of my clients are in the biopharma space, from early stage startups through big pharma, and I specialize in cell and gene therapy manufacturing. I'm excited to talk to you guys here today.
Thank you so much. Dr. Marks? I think we lost Dr. Marks. We lost Dr. Marks, I guess. Maybe he's going to rejoin us again. Ryan, please.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. This is Ryan Sade. So I have spent about 25 years plus in the biopharma industry, and I am the founder and the current CEO of Tevagen Bio, which is an immunotherapy company. So thanks for the opportunity, Haro.
Of course, of course. So while we're waiting for Dr. Marks to rejoin us again, I guess we can start maybe the panel discussion with one of the questions that it's very important to me. One of the biggest challenges facing biotech companies these days of all sizes has to do with the capacity and supply chain management. The global production of vaccines and pandemic really has had an effect on the capacity of the manufacturing companies. And if you are an emerging and growing biotech firm, how do you engage technology developers and suppliers who may be focused on the larger fish in the pound, i.e. vaccine production, and how you can make them attractive to you? Sorry, I lost my, how can you make them attractive to you and take your company and help you to manufacture your product? So we'll start with Ryan. We'll start with you.
Well, Dr. Marks is back.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Harris. So yes, that is it is kind of actually interesting now that we have. Well, first off, for the startup companies, I guess it is actually okay to mention that we have Biocentric as our partner, and we could not be more grateful than anything else. Now, how did we actually end up here? So the couple of things actually did. Number one is it is kind of interesting, like startups, when they traditionally, they don't actually have the in-house expertise, and they are the ones they can benefit most from the best and the whatever actually the finest CDMOs can offer. And it's really, we need the partnership. It's not just, hand down a project. So what actually we did, I can just talk about my own experience. We started very, very early, and that's number one. And number two is that we did not actually decide to do things sequentially. So on the one hand, we are actually getting into clinical trials. On the other hand, we started looking for the partner actually during our preclinical work. So that was very, very important. The third thing is that, of course, the expertise and the resources, the dollars, and all that matters. But the one thing is very important is that it is a long-term relationship, and the match between the culture, the mission, the belief system, that is something actually we thought it was very important, because it cannot be just a project, because the Biocentric and our scientists, they work side by side, and there is a personal bonding, and so that's why actually we ended up. But we, it is actually really just to spend a lot of time and start as soon as you can and look for those partners. They do exist, obviously, because we have Biocentric as our partner.
Right. Well, we thank you, Ryan, for the answer. But before I go to Katie and Dr. Marks rejoined us again. So please, we're asking people to introduce themselves. So Dr. Marks, if you could briefly introduce yourself and tell us about your background.
So thanks, and sorry, my internet router decided to reboot in the middle. I think we've all been there, this pandemic. So I'm Peter Marks, Director of Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research at FDA. We are involved in the regulation and facilitating the development of vaccines, gene and cell therapies, and blood products and derivatives. So advanced manufacturing has become a very important aspect for us, and manufacturing in general has been an area of focus. It's clear the pandemic has only heightened our limitations and our successes in manufacturing. So we look forward to today's discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. So the question I raised and while you were gone was the impact of the pandemic and the vaccine production for COVID-19 on the capacity of the manufacturing for other small biotech companies, because small biotech companies right now there's a capacity issue, and they want to make their material, they want to develop their material, but the companies, CDMOs, they are maxed out their capacity for vaccine production, and they don't have the resources to help these small biotech companies. So the question was really, what's your strategy? How do you resolve this issue? And that was the question I asked Ryan. So I'm going to ask Katie to maybe comment on this and answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think throughout the industry, people who make cell and gene therapy, clinical products, commercial products, there's obviously been a capacity constraint. And the CDMOs and suppliers are working on it, right? I mean, they are building as much capacity as they can, expanding So, that's fantastic, but what do you do in the meantime? So I think what Ryan said is absolutely right. I think what CDMOs are looking for are building more of a strategic partnership with their clients. And that can look different, right? It could be co-investment in space together. So that could be an answer for certain companies, or it could be more transparency, better sharing of, your pipeline data, your expected volumes, so just, better sharing of data so that CDMOs can anticipate your needs and figure out how to balance their own sort of portfolio. So that is one element of building a strategic partnership. Another could be, as Ryan mentioned, sort of helping to build their capabilities in sort of a unique space, right? If you're coming in and you've got great technology and you're willing to sort of teach them a bit of that technology, that can create, benefit for them long term. So it's all about building that strategic partnership and sort of leveraging what you have and are willing to give, if you will, to build that strategic partnership. So I think that's one element. And I think another way companies are thinking about this is building more resiliency into the manufacturing and supply chain. And so it may be, working with two different suppliers for key materials, or dual sourcing. And of course, this has been very common in large scale commercial manufacturing, but we're starting to see even in clinical and development, some companies are taking this strategy as a bit of a hedging strategy, to make sure that they are able to get the capacity that they need and are able to withstand, risks and issues as they come up.
Sounds good. Well, good answer. Dr. Marks, any comments on this? I know that you're back again. I think we're having a technical difficulty with Dr. Marks' connection, but maybe along that comment, what are the key elements, factors for any company that they take to select the CDMO? It has to be some sort of a selection process for the biotech companies to decide which manufacturing or development entities they're going to be partnering up with. So, Ryan, can you address that?
Oh, that's probably the most important question, Haro. Thank you. So I think it is. So if you actually are starting up a company, I guess by default you are a risk taker. Perhaps. So the natural instinct to tell you is that take sequential steps in terms of go from preclinical clinical trials. What are you thinking about the long-term goal of manufacturing? I think that's where I believe the problem might happen. So what actually we did is that we started simultaneously, so that when we are doing our basic lab work, we were selectively looking for the manufacturing partners. Now, how did you actually decide on who to go with? And that is actually another important question. So always plan for success. So what actually does that mean is that we sat down, and the very first document we created is a target product profile. And it is extremely important that we are absolutely honest, not optimistic, based on the real facts and what is actually your product might or might not be able to deliver. And then understand the patient population that who might benefit from your innovations, understand the access pathways, reimbursement, and just to do the entire thing. And then try to understand that what exactly is the definition of success that you are going to achieve. And that should dictate the next step is that who do you partner with? Is it going to be a short-term relationship? Are you thinking of, and then of course, a lot of startup companies, they have a so-called exit strategy. Are you actually here for a certain number of years and then you want to get out of this? Or you want to actually stay here for the long term? So all those factors need to be understood and researched, and really the company team need to come out and feel comfortable with that. And it comes down to this again, is that when actually we partner with the Biocentric, we are thinking about sort of something probably that time. It may have sounded unrealistic during then, but now we are in the clinics. So you can just imagine that. So that's what actually dictated understanding and quantifying and crystallizing the need, not just in an immediate, the long term. That's what is extremely important, I believe.
Yep. I think I want to just ask, while we're waiting for Dr. Marks to join us again, I hope that he will. But Katie, I think this is something that you can help us to, for the audience to address, is the fact that optimization, again, there are a bunch of CDMOs, manufacturing partners, and small biotech companies. They have limited resources, i.e. the money and the human resources. So selecting the right partner in manufacturing and developing the product plays a very important role. So can you walk us through, based on your experience, what are the factors that they have to consider to select the right partner for their development and manufacturing of their product?
Yeah, absolutely. And as McKinsey, we have both surveyed a group of industry executives on these kinds of topics, as well as, I've served clients on these topics and helped them develop their own criteria. And they're always slightly different, but sort of what rises to the top, number one, is technical capabilities. So technical capabilities actually in the manufacturing, right? As well as the development, helping you develop a really robust process, as well as supporting what's going to be needed for filing. So, success in filing a BLA, proven sort of that you can do this and you've got a good process and you know what's important. That's always a key criteria. For some folks, a key criteria is also that you have manufactured commercial products. If you believe that you're going to keep your product at this CDMO, for late stage clinical and eventually, PPQ and commercialization, companies often don't want to be, especially smaller companies, they don't want to be the first product to make that sort of transition, because there's a lot of work and resources that are often needed to be put in place to ensure that the quality systems and everything are sort of GMP ready for commercial production. So that, to me, all of that sort of fits in the technical capabilities bucket, and that is always at the top. Then is quality, right? And those are probably quite even, to be honest, is, just robust quality systems, demonstration that they can, produce a quality product within control, and quality and technical capabilities really go hand in hand. And then the rest sort of, vary. I would say cost, is not the most important factor, because if you make a decision on cost, you'll end up sort of sometimes paying for it later in, needing to bring in more resources to support the BLA or to fix something that's going on. So I would say cost is not often the deciding factor.
That's a very good point. I think especially for biotech companies, although the cost shouldn't be the deciding factor, but also, as you know, they don't have lots of money in the bank. They have a little bit of money, and they've raised, even not before Series A or even Series A, that the money becomes a very important factor. But absolutely, technical capabilities, in my view, plays a number one factor, and then track record. I believe that it's very important that the companies, they've done this before and they know how to manufacture regenerative medicine products, cell and gene therapy products. So I agree with you. Ryan, do you want to add something?
Yeah, if I may. So just a couple of, I guess, we take the chances, I suppose. What was actually also on our list, Katie, you actually listed out all of them very clearly. we also actually wanted to find a partner that they actually also have a sort of like, if I may, this startup mindset. They also actually want to succeed, and our success becomes their success. And now that's actually kind of, I mean, we have that, Haro, as you know. We did not actually look at the track record, of course we did, but for the way actually finally decided is that we looked at someone like Haro, but nothing personal, Haro, is that what is his background and where actually is coming from, and all of the other people that he has in his team. We did actually look at them, we did talk to them, we sat down with them, and those are the ones, because one thing is important to keep in mind is that a startup, someone like myself, I am not an expert. I have no way to really assess if that is the right technical expertise or not. So I have to go by the history of the individuals, the experts involved in the initiative.
Right. Oh, Dr. Marks, you're back. So we're talking about just the general selection criteria for biotech companies, and one of the things that for the manufacturing partners, and one of the things that Katie mentioned, which I totally agree, is the quality and regulatory impact. So one item that Katie suggested that the company they should consider is the attention to the quality, compliance, and the regulations. So small biotech companies, they don't have those resources. And my question, maybe you can now, it's a good timing for you to discuss about what are the most common regulatory issues and challenges that the small biotech companies are facing, and what would you recommend as an FDA person for early stage companies to help them overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably it's a great question. I think probably the first thing I would say is find a good consultant that you can trust, and use word of mouth to do so. Don't just go to 1-800-consultants or look on the web, because there are people who might have worked at FDA for a year or two who set up shop consulting, but who really don't know the area really well. You want somebody that's going to be a regulatory consultant that has perhaps industry experience and some significant FDA experience in CMC, so that you don't get caught flat-footed. That's number one. Mm-hmm. The other piece is that it's like an 80-20 rule. Focus on the stuff that really matters, that's going to really matter to FDA, which is that good documentation of what you're doing, good documentation of controls. And when it comes to early on work, sometimes things that don't seem so exciting, such as getting critical quality attributes nailed down and getting a potency assay, those may be really important things to do earlier on rather than later. And to the extent that you can get your whoever you're working with to help work on that, that's a good thing.
Very good. I totally agree with you. I think the companies that we are working at Biocentric, they're all very careful about doing exactly what you just mentioned. I think at the end of the day, I've seen companies, they had done a great job, brilliant product, but at the end, FDA, they haven't fulfilled the FDA requirements, and they've had many issues and problems, and they run out of money and they cannot commercialize their product. So absolutely, you're correct. At the beginning, I would suggest all the small biotech companies to have a very solid regulatory quality compliance consultant on board, the individuals that they have done this before, and they can help them to take the product to the next level. So I think lastly, one of the things that I've been always thinking about is the workforce and the competition for the skilled and expert professionals in the cell and gene therapy. There's a shortage of the skilled professionals, and on top of that, there's a segment of the industry, the big pharma, that they have a big pocket and they can hire whoever they want and then offer them huge salaries. So the small biotech companies, they end up with nothing, and or there are challenges that to hire people. So my question would be that what advice would you give to the listeners to this webinar in terms of how to compete for the limited pool of experts who are out there. So I'll start that with Dr. Marks.
Yeah, I bet our industry people will be better at saying this. I mean, I think if you're a small biotech, what you're going to be needing to do probably is you're competing. You've got to figure out kind of the balance of what you're trying to recruit, because you're going to need somebody that has more experience, because you don't have people internally to provide them with that experience. So you can't get someone that's really green. On the other hand, you may not have the dollars, the cash to hire at the other end. So I think what you need to do is very selectively look for people, maybe mid-career, people that are potentially looking to expand their horizons, and appeal to them with the mission of what you're doing, right? That hopefully you're doing something that is exciting, that you can appeal to them, that what you will do will help them develop their skills, branch out, essentially have them feel some way of feeling fulfilled, to make something their own. And that's how I think you have to appeal to someone that's a mid-career professional, perhaps, because I think the problem is if you hire too young, you're going to get, and it's no disrespect, it's just that you don't have the bandwidth to make mistakes or train someone in that regard. At the other end, the dollars to hire the head of manufacturing from a large pharma, right? You're not going to have that either. So it's really finding that sweet spot of a combination of what you can afford and the cash equivalent value of having someone who can essentially run their own program without someone over them. You see what I'm saying? It seems like somebody who may be currently under managers, but who can now become a manager. It seems like an ideal kind of person to look for. But I'm not a human resource professional. I'm just I'm playing a game here.
Well,
I'm playing one.
Before I ask that question, because I think Ryan and Katie, I'm sure that they will help us. One of the things that I always tell the young entrepreneurs is the fact that stay virtual. And at the beginning, just hire, as you suggested, hire top-notch consultants in the CMC side, manufacturing side, and regulatory side, and then get your product at least in the IND level. And then when you have in the Series A and Series B, then you have a little bit more money in the bank, go and start building your infrastructure. But I will let that question to be answered by Katie. Katie, you deal with a bunch of companies and you see what's happening as far as this limited workforce in the regenerative medicine industry. So tell us what you think.
Yeah, well, I think Dr. Marks, he may not be a businessman, but he hit it right on the head, right? It's looking for the right kind of people, right? And it does tend to be, folks who are mid-career and are looking, people who are looking for a challenge. They want to keep learning, they want to keep growing, and they find that big pharma just doesn't give them that opportunity, right? And so they've gained all this knowledge. They feel like they've learned everything they can in sort of their big pharma company, and they want to, go to a, innovative startup. And I think it's, yes, definitely appealing to their sense of purpose and why they want to join this company, the patients' lives are going to impact, changing the industry, all of those things. There's also the big risk, big reward. It may not be cash today, but it is, a stake in this important company, the startup with tons of potential. And so there is some risk there, right? It may not be as big a dollar salary as you could get if you work for a big pharma company, but there's a lot of potential upside. So I think those are the things that, I think that you have on your side as a smaller biotech startup. And, I, of course, serve lots of big pharma companies, and they're feeling this talent challenge as well. And it's actually because a lot of their talent learns a bunch at the big pharma company, has a successful BLA, and then they're quite marketable. And these folks want to go out and work for these smaller startup companies. So actually, I would say big pharma feels like they're losing the talent war to these more innovative, more nimble, flexible startup companies that are giving people a ton of opportunity to learn and grow.
Very good. Ryan?
I think, Dr. Mark, as you probably answered the most eloquent way, the HR question, right actually to the point, and to Katie just elaborated on that. It is really interesting that the human mind is such is that not always everybody is driven by dollars. Maybe up to a certain point, it is important to them that they actually feel we are part of a mission. And it actually does magical things. So we have this, I just pay attention. I guess my employees are going to hear now. It makes me really, really happy when a new colleague starts making a statement. We have this thing, that means they're actually part of this. So it is an internal company culture and respect for each other, and those kind of stuff actually are probably as important as dollars. And then, of course, this startup comes with the other things that Katie captured. That's actually our experience, and we are extremely pleased with what the talent pool we have for the moment. Thank you, Aaron.
Yep. Good. Well, I think it's. I think one of the other things that I want to add, Dr. Marks will agree, is the role of universities and training the future workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that universities, they should be entrepreneurial, meaning that they have to always align their programs with what the industry needs are, and train students that when they're ready to graduate, they can go and start working with prior knowledge of the industry, rather than just working on stuff that they may not, they may require lots of training. And so that's good. We in New Jersey, actually, which is in my view is a cell and gene therapy hub, with Novartis and Bristol Myers and Cellularity and a bunch of other companies that are coming. I think we have a shortage of the resources, and we're helping the companies on top of providing process development, manufacturing capabilities. We also help the companies to train and provide them with the future workforce in that area. So the last part of the question is really knowing what you all know as a strategic advisors and leading experts and regulatory affairs and a successful startup with a robust pipeline. What would be your one piece of advice that you would give to the growing biotech companies that are in the audience and they want to hear from you? So what would be the one piece of advice? We'll start with Katie.
Oh, okay. I think my one piece of advice would be to find the right partners when it comes to manufacturing. So the right CDMOs or the right consultants, as Dr. Marks mentioned, leverage the talent that you have, but realize that you only have so much talent internally, and how can you leverage experience outside of your sort of four walls or your virtual four walls or whatever that may be, to take advantage of the experience that's out there, other people who've been in your shoes or have worked, as CDMOs have worked with other companies in your shoes. I think it's finding the right partners and leveraging them in the right way, while not sort of losing, what's unique about you and, your unique, technology or IP or whatever that may be.
Very good. Dr. Marks?
Yeah, so I think Katie mainly said what I would say. I mean, just to amplify on that, I think to the extent that you can find that you can look around and find paths to follow, it's always easier to go down a path that somebody has taken previously.
Mm-hmm.
So look for examples, even if it's not exactly what you've done. Leverage what's been done before. So don't, there's sometimes, just because you might be doing something that's new doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't done something like it. So take advantage of all the information you can gather, positive and negative. Look for where people have failed as well, and don't fall into those traps. But certainly go where people have succeeded.
Very good. And Ryan, as an entrepreneur yourself?
Dr. Marks, I think you have prospected many other areas, including business. We we're really saying the same thing. So yes, that's is the only thing actually I would recommend, request. We did actually, of course, just for one company. If we can invent something new in medical technology, I think there needs to be an enough amount of confidence in us that we can also actually find. So it doesn't actually have to be as usual. I mean, obviously, we cannot mimic or copy something which is adopted by the large pharma companies. To Dr. Mark's point, is that there is something always out there, and find that and learn from these learnings and try to come up with the new things and be just, courageous, risk-taking, but I guess prudent risk-taking, I suppose.
Very good. Very good. One comment I want to make, and it is really directed toward the FDA. FDA has been extremely helpful. If you compare what the FDA is doing today compared to 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I started my career, FDA is actually helping companies to take their product faster, quicker to market, and even helping them in making sure that they won't make any mistakes. So my experience has been that their doors are always open. You have a question, they will just jump on it and answer the questions. This is amazing what Dr. Marks has done and organization, the regulatory agency has done for the small biotech companies. So my advice to the small biotech companies, take advantage of this open door policy of the FDA and their willingness to help you guys to be successful. So reach out to FDA and ask questions. They're always, my experience has been that they're always helpful and they try to help you. Dr. Marks, do you want to add something to that effect?
Yeah, I think that I would echo that. I think if there's anything that's been to me a real challenge during the pandemic has been that the level of responsiveness that we'd like to have has fallen off from where we'd like it to be, just because of the overwhelming number of submissions related to COVID-19 and some of the challenges. And so as we head into the post-pandemic period, we're really looking forward to trying to get back on top of the game of being able to be more highly responsive. I think particularly in cell and gene therapies, there are areas where if we really want to see these fields take off, there will need to be, especially early on, there needs to be kind of a special relationship for trying to get these responses relatively quickly, because first of all, the cycle time for these are so short that it's not like a small molecule where you're asking a question about a synthesis that's going to be the same this year as next year. Here, usually you're asking questions about processes that are going to stay in place for a few years at the most before they evolve to some new process. So timeliness is really important. And I'm the first to admit that we were overtaxed before the pandemic, and the pandemic has really slowed us down. So we're going to try to get back to where we want to be. Also in part by staffing up and in part by kind of retooling a little bit.
So how if I could
go ahead.
I mean, Dr. Marks, I understand that, and I am not sure how actually FDA does that. Yes, FDA's door is always open, and I think we were surprised at the amount of attention and the help. I don't want to say the hand-holding, but it was almost like that. And that is something I have not seen in the past either. That is so we actually appreciate that, Dr. Marks. This is making a difference.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you.
It's amazing. It's amazing. My experience with Dr. Marks. I mean, he's the head of the CBER. You send him an email, not 10 minutes, you receive a response from him. And I don't know how he does that. I mean, running an agency in the biologics and being able to address it's amazing. So I want to thank you, Dr. Marks. Katie, you want to add anything?
Nope, I think everyone has sort of covered it.
All right. So I think we have done with our questioning. Now I want to ask our moderator, organizer, if there are questions from the audience that we can actually start addressing them.
Absolutely. So there is a question from the audience that came around what skills or experience do you think it's critical for a biotech startup to have in-house to work successfully with outside partners? In other words, what role or capabilities do we have to have on staff and not rely on our partners? Or do we make sure we don't, or to make sure that we don't overlook when we are building out our team? Sorry, that was being read in real time.
No, very good question. Practically what the question, if I rephrase it, is the fact that what do they have to have it in-house and what do they have to have outsourced and tap into the external resources? What are the minimum requirements for the small biotech companies when they're building their infrastructure to make sure that, so I can speak toward that, but I will let Katie to address that first.
Actually, I think I probably don't have the best view of this. I would think maybe Ryan or Haro, you guys would have a better view of what you really need to have in-house.
All right, so my experience, to just answer that question a little bit, my experience has been in the past that you gotta have at least maybe a scientist or founder who knows the technology well on board. And that can be a faculty member, a professor, as your chief scientific officer. Yourself as a founder of the company, the entrepreneur, of course, you should be there. And the rest, I think it really depends on which stage of the company you are in. So if you're a purely startup company, I think those two people are going to be important. But more importantly, at that stage, you need to have your KOLs also on board. The very strong scientific advisory board, reach out to people, making sure that whatever you're doing for your animal studies or preclinical studies, those experts are helping you to do that. And then, start hiring some consultants and tap into for example, somebody who can help you develop your clinical strategy. There are consultants out there, somebody who can help you on the CMC side, and the consultant. And then when you are down the road and stay virtual, and then when you're down the road that you're getting ready to file your IND, then you need to bring maybe somebody on the manufacturing side on board to help you select the right manufacturing organization, development organization. So it's an evolving process from the start to finish. I will let Ryan to add more.
I think the question was that how much do you keep in-house and how much do you outsource? I think the approach we have taken for the moment is that we try to actually keep our PD related, so the process development related work in-house, and those are the areas. So, everything else we kind of think that it is probably not quite realistic for us to believe that we can build in a like 10 biocentric or find all of those talents. So we try to create this network of collaborators, and we have actually too many of those, and I think it is working wonderfully. It's a new business model, perhaps. The second thing actually we also do, how should I actually articulate that, is you need actually, to Harry's point, you need the actually sort of like almost like an adult supervision, right? You need actually those senior most people to guide those teams, but not to really invest too much in the early on, because the value of the dollar is more than $1 at the beginning, as you know.
Right. I think I'm sure that Dr. Marks will echo that the getting the regulatory consultant or quality compliance consultant right off the bat is a very important factor. Do you agree with that, Dr. Marks?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But I think one of the important things, I think, Haro, that you mentioned, getting that scientific person that's really skilled, that person also, if they have good skills at determining the level of expertise of others that they're interacting with, is a huge help. because they know the science then, but they can also then judge who they're interacting with. I mean, that having those two things in a chief scientific officer is a real, the difference between chief scientific officers that kind of do the job versus ones that really excel, at least the ones that I've seen, are the ones that can, they know the science really well, but they also have that knack, enough knowledge of the other aspects of this. They're not regulatory experts by any means, but they know enough that they can tell if someone's selling them a bill of goods versus if they're the real thing. And so finding, I think a lot of, I would just echo what you said, finding that, you know, since that's often the second or third person in the company, finding that person right is really important, because they can help then make the future choices. And it's almost like a domino effect, that if you get it right early on, and it will kind of be the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah, and actually, absolutely right. Yeah.
And one piece of advice I want to give, maybe as like, and then Katie will maybe echo on this or comment on this. The small biotech companies, they have a small product and they go and say, well, I want to raise $30 million. Nobody's going to give you $30 million with no clinical data or even some proof of concept. So having things internally, and also being very realistic that you have to do it, you know, like taking a baby steps. Have your founder, professor, whoever as your scientific advisory board members, raise a little bit of seed funding, get a little bit of more proof of concept data, and make sure that you feel comfortable with the technology. Then you start going to the larger amount of money that you want to raise. And I think that would be the beneficial to this company, rather than just going with a small animal data in mice and say, well, I want to raise $30 million. Nobody's going to give you $30 million with mice data. That would be my suggestion. Katie, do you want to add something there?
I mean, I think that's right, Haro, right? I mean, it's, you know, investors are looking for a return, and, you know, they want data to help support that. I mean, obviously the biotech industry is very attractive and exciting to investors, but they do their diligence, and they're looking for data, of course.
Right. Ryan, do you agree with that as an entrepreneur?
Just yes, of course. That we have a slight different perspective to add or to consider. One is that yes, it can be actually kind of strange that we just have a concept and people are willing to give you lots of money, and what actually it means is that what is the trade-off? If you're losing control over your company, then probably your drive is somewhat compromised early on. So what actually I would say is, even actually when you are fully qualified, you are extremely attractive to get not 30, maybe $300 million. So still just be thoughtful that how much of the control you want to give up. Because each of us, we have an objective. For us, I mean, we want to bring immunotherapy for a larger patient population. I mean, it is an interesting objective, and we would not like to be compromised by certain factors. But, you know, there will be time, and just be patient until you get to the point.
Yeah, I think dilution, of course, plays a role, but I try to put everything into perspective for the young entrepreneurs that, you know, as get your chief scientific officer on board, put your solid scientific advisory board on board, and making sure that they buy into what you're trying to suggest, and then raise a little bit of money and be very careful in what you're doing with your money. And I think you're going to be successful. And get the FDA and quality compliance person, consultant on board, because that plays a very important role. Any other questions from audience?
Yes, there was one more, and it was directed to the whole panel, but also with a comment, would be amazing to get Dr. Mark's perspective on this. And the question is, do you see a day where digital solutions like electronic batch records will become the standard for manufacturing, replacing paper batch records on the shop floor?
Yeah, very good. Dr. Marks, we'll let you address that.
I mean, I sure hope we get there. because it would make things. You can imagine that things could be so much. It would make things so much more facile than they are now. We're not there yet, but I think it would make a huge difference. I also think that one of the things that might facilitate ultimately, I think, and this may be getting too far ahead of too far out of over our skis, but once you start to have electronic data like this, and inside the agency, we can start to use supercomputing and start to actually look for trends, critical quality, we can actually maybe do more than we can now with a bunch of paper or PDF copies of paper that sits around in our file room. So I think it's a very exciting thing. I hope we get there sooner rather than later, because it will make it's where we need to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could build on that, Dr. Marks, so absolutely it's where we need to get to. I think it's where the industry is heading. I think, not just electronic batch records, but just more digital solutions in general and manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And yes, it would enable the agency to use, advanced analytics to find trends, but even, I think more importantly, would enable the companies to do that, right? They can use advanced analytics to find ways to improve yield, decrease deviations, pulling data from their process, plus their data from their raw materials, and identify trends that we just can't find today, right? And those connections on, if something, if your activity coefficient is higher here, then it means something else down the line. You just can't find that today. And we need these electronic batch records and just digital solutions really throughout the manufacturing process to enable us to do that. But I am seeing companies, dip their toes in the water to do this today. And we just, we need to get it everywhere.
I think I can just put a plug for Biocentric that we're fully digital in our manufacturing facility, manufacturing execution system, QMS, everything else is in place, and I think going toward that direction. But Ryan, do you want to add something?
No, I'm just actually trying to compliment you. You must have had a vision and a way back when, right? Now we are benefiting from it, but it's
I think digitalization. Yeah, I think as Katie mentioned, digitalization and automation, eventually Industry 4.0 and operational excellence and all those stuff that we are talking, I think is going to play a very important role on the future of the manufacturing of the cell and gene therapy products. Standardization also as another thing that we should focus on, standardizing, because as you know, cell and gene therapy manufacturing is very expensive, very labor intensive, and future is automation. Future is the digital application of automation processes in manufacturing those products. Any other questions?
I'm afraid this is it.
All right. Well, I think we're done. Thank you so much for attending this panel. It was a pleasure, Dr. Marks, with your busy schedule, Ryan and Katie. Thank you so much. And we're looking forward to having more webinars like this in the future. And with that, I want to thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.